talking about winning in a competitive market situation. So, how to dominate multiple offers, how to tackle appraisal gaps, how to deal with appraisers, how to close deals despite financing obstacles, how to negotiate inspection issues, all that type of stuff. So, we always have these issues coming up in our business because that's our business, right? That's why, literally 20 years ago when I started, I was 21, I had a full head of hair, and I still have a full head of hair. It's just on my back now. Um, make sure you started the recording. It looks like it's going good. Everything's good. All right, so we're gonna Brian. Where's Brian? Brian, get back on here.
Oh, he had to change his name. He's come up under Randy, so he's going to make it look like Randy now.
I'm
Just
gonna.
change the name,
I'm
Brian.
for
Sorry,
some
guys.
reason Brian always gets the end of the stick on this. So I'm gonna give Brian the first of the stick today.
I have a prehistoric computer here. Evidently, every time I sign in, it's the link in my calendar that you all sent, and mine came from Randy. So I'm
That's
trying to
funny.
figure it out.
Yeah, well, we can all chip in, $100 each. We can buy you a new computer if you need.
I don't know. This one
Well,
likes me. It's familiar.
yeah, yeah. That was one of those compact 286s.
Close.
So the people who are on here who are under 40 years old have no idea what I just said.
You notice why I laughed? I knew exactly what you're talking about.
So it's funny. Before we get started, I want to throw something out to everybody. I was having a conversation with an AI guy yesterday, and so for those of you that are a little older, like myself, or within the last 10 years of me, the internet really started in like the mid '80s with message boards. If you guys remember that, there was message boards, and those were a popular thing in the mid late '80s, and then really the internet didn't really kick off till 1994, right? When I said the internet kicked off with AOL, even though we had Prodigy and CompuServe before that, it didn't become mainstream until the AOL started sending out their discs 1993, 94. And but we're not talking about AI today. I just think that's kind of interesting. And so the conversation we had yesterday, we're 1986 internet with AI. So it's really going to be interesting to watch what goes on over the next 10, 15, hopefully I live 20, 25 more years. And I told my kids, I only want to live like 50 more years because I'm really excited about where the technology is going to go. Now, don't get me wrong, AI is probably going to kill all of us in the next 10 years. Terminator is going to come real, but anyways, it's just interesting that we're like such a pre thing. And I'll give you another thing I'm doing with it right now. I think a lot of you guys know I'm a diabetic, and so I do all my stuff holistically. I'm not a pill popper, and I don't think I'll ever go back to the doctor. I'm doing all of my analysis on ChatGPT. You can't see it on my long sleeve, but I have a sensor on. I upload my graph every day to ChatGPT. It monitors my A1C levels. It monitors my daily glucose levels. It tells me what to do to get it back down to get where I want to go, hit my goals. Phenomenal. I've learned more in the past 2 months doing that than I've ever learned from my doctor the last 5 years. Crazy.
Wow.
So, anyways, Brian. So, tell us your strategies to save deals and win when you're opposing other agents, and anything that you really kind of want to talk about today.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to give you a perspective that's a little different than maybe the other agents, because for almost 10 years, I ran compliance for a brokerage, and I had to save nothing but deals. That was my job, right? So Randy gave me a fireman hat. I still have it to this day. I am the fireman. And what I learned was that when deals are falling apart, there's always a solution, but typically when there's miscommunication between the buyer and the seller, that happens because of the agents. And when the agents start to have problems, then it's hard to have a deal close. If you're a frustrated agent, well, guess what? Your clients have to be frustrated because they can't be having a great time if you're frustrated. So the goal is to calm everybody down when a deal is falling apart. And then what I would do is I would stop all communication between agents and let the buyer and the seller work out the problems using documents, right? Because that's what they're for. If you have an addendum that's not been used yet, we'll put all the voices down in an addendum and present it to the buyer and the seller so they can see what they're both trying to communicate here. Because when agents stop communicating with their clients and start owning the deal, especially if you're dealing with a bully client on the other end, right? I know none of you would do this. But if there's a bully client on the other end or a client that's just not understanding, stop the communication. That's the first thing. Because what I would do is I teach all of our agents to call CAR Legal. In California, we have a legal update hotline. So if your deal's falling apart or you're having a hard time, here's the best thing about the legal department for the real estate, your association, is they're attorneys. So if you call them and you say, hey, I'm having a problem on a deal, my deal's going sideways, the other client or this or whatever the deal, maybe you're the problem, I don't know, but here's what I do know. The first one to call the legal department is the one who registers the complaint on that property. Now they are in a dual representation. If the other broker calls, they can't help them. They have to call their own attorney. So in California, I trained all of our agents that if they were having an issue, before they call me, I want you to call Car Legal. I want you to tell them what the problem is. I want you to register the problem, even if I can solve it, which I will. But I want them to teach me what they learned so they can be teachable, and then they would teach other agents in the office when there was office meetings, right? So, we do Zoom meetings. We still do this to this day with our team. If somebody does go sideways on a deal. So I like to put the fire out really by stopping the communication between the parties who are creating the problem, because that's what it is. It's miscommunication somewhere. The buyer's not being heard, or the seller's not being understood, or neither one of them are even in the know because the brokers are having an issue. And maybe it's not even about the house. It could be about the commission. It could be about a contingency release and someone is not complying. Well, that's what transaction coordinators are for. Let your coordinators work out the deal, send the forms back and forth, remove yourself. That was my first team leader. We did 100 transactions and 60 million in closed volume in 2003. And the moment I was in escrow, my team leader said, Brian, get out of your escrow and go do what you do best. And that's represent buyers and sellers and let my team take over. So that's how I would handle it today, even with all the technology and AI and everything we have going on. To really solve a problem, you have to have really good communication. And I believe that the communication that I see today is typically texting. So it's hard to communicate via text, at least what you're trying to say, because you might come across bitchy or you might come across really nice. And then the other person tries to take advantage of that, or they take it the wrong way. And those now, from what I understand, texts along with emails, they're all admissible. Right. So if you have a deal that you're going to find yourself in mediation and somebody's got a bunch of drama going on, all of that's going to come out. And I say, stop it. Just don't even do it. Don't engage in it. And really let your documents, whether it's a disclosure, a contingency release, hey, here's the estimates that the buyers have. Let your seller get the estimate, whatever it is, work it out with the documents. Have your transaction coordinators, if you have one, work with the other one. If the agent's doing their own deal or you're doing your own deal, then I highly recommend that you always CC the other agent's broker and or manager. They need to know their agent is involved in something that's going sideways. And if you ever want to put the fire out quick, find out who the other agent's manager is or mentor or whoever, and begin to CC somebody else from the other brokerage. So there's a discussion going on the other side, and maybe even manage. I would have our agents CC me. They'd put me in. So if you're not your manager and you want to include your manager to enforce some muscle on the other side, do it. Be very clear. So that's how I put out the fires. In negotiations, I think last week I shared that I really let my clients know, listen, I don't want to negotiate with them. I want to negotiate for them. That's my goal. My job is to negotiate for my clients. And when I'm negotiating with another agent, I really try to find the win-win argument first, if it's verbal and I'm going through. But if I'm just negotiating 10 offers or against 10 offers, then we had some really good stuff here last week on how to win, those types of things and the things you want to do to win those. And most of it is really good communication with the listing agent or the buyer's agent. A lot of times before you show a property is a really good time to collect a lot of the information you need to have to negotiate later ahead of time. So if you're showing a property and it's hard to get in, you might want to ask the agent, hey, before I show it, what's important to the seller that I would know that if they were to walk me around and show me, what do I need to know? Like, I haven't seen this property yet. What's going to be important? Do they need an extra time to close? Do they need this after the sale? Or if it's a buyer, a buyer's need, and you're the listing agent, you want to let the listing agent information that to the buyer's agents and communicate what's going to be most important when they're there. Because if they haven't seen the property yet, then what happens is a lot of agents show, they get excited, they write the offer, and then they can't even ever talk to or get to the communication gap that we were talking about last week. So go back and watch last week's video. But I hope that answered the question, Mitch, because really, as a compliance officer and as an agent, I learned really quickly that my communication with the other agent is paramount to the. I want to be on the same team. I want us to be on the same team. We should always be working together. That is really why we took an oath to serve our customers, not to serve ourselves, but to serve our customers. We're no longer, if you're with eXp, you're blessed to be with a broker who doesn't see you as the client. Most brokerages see you as their client, because if you're not earning commissions, they don't really care what's going on in your client's world. They care about you. But at eXp, we're the owners. So we own our companies. We have value in this. We want to succeed, and our clients are our clients. We're not our broker's client. And that's very unique. And I think people start to realize that that's what this industry is all about. Because if your broker serves your clients, right? If your broker serves your clients, that's what our broker does. They give us the absolute best tools, toolkit, everything. We're at the cutting edge of everything. They serve us so we can serve our clients, because everything our broker gives us is for our clients. It's not for us, because we are not their client. So I'll leave it with that.
That's great. And I'll just tag on to that for a second, because I think it's really important. And I see it so many times. I dealt with this yesterday. We have one of our agents and another agent, and the other agent was making fun of our agent, like literally went, "Nya, nya, nya, nya," like really just like that, because our agent, and that the other didn't submit the commission by a brokerage commission form, and to her sellers. And so they accepted the deal and didn't send back the commission form and said, "Oh, well, we're not paying that. This is what we're paying." And she never submitted it. So actually, they filed a grievance today against them, because you can't do that. You have to submit the offer the way it is. Right? That's the legal of it. But Brian, like you said, it all comes down to communication. I can't tell you how many fires I've put out over the years just by being a nice guy and getting on. And I'm only 5'5.5". I'll say 5'6". I'm like, you piss me off, you're in trouble. And I learned that from my wife, who's only 4'9". You piss her up, you're dead. Anyways, Craig, you're up, bud.
There's a great line that stress occurs when our actions and our behaviors are incongruent with our thoughts and our beliefs in words. So when you're going into negotiations with everybody, it's really important to understand where everybody has, what their beliefs and their actions are of the whole process. Unfortunately, in society today, we talked about it last week, some people just want to win. They just want to cause problems. They're toxic. They are what they are. You can't change everybody. And as long as you understand that, and I've learned that through the years, I've tried to change people. I've tried to change me. But what I have learned through the years, and we just went through it this past 2 weeks, in the past week since our last call, we were in 3 multiple offer bids, of which we won 2, of which we lost the other one, but it was for one reason, that we didn't see the sideways coming. The buyer owns a worldwide moving company, and and the seller was moving to France and lives in France, and volunteered to move them for free, even though we were the same offer, same thing. The agent wanted to work with us, whatever it might be. So that is something that we can't control. And we told our buyer that's an unknown price, because you never know the value of insurance and everything. But to have the agent come out and say the only reason you guys lost was because of this, that means that's huge communication. And it really comes down to building the rapport with the agent and understanding it. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. Build the rapport with the agent. Ask them what their expectations are. Ask them what their client's expectations are. Explain that to your buyer. Make your buyer approachable and explain their expectations to the other agent. We get so busy being stuck in black and white ink and drawing lines that once we make it more emotional, it works. And is it easy? No, because I think it was Brian or Randy, one of you guys said last week, or I think it was Ross. Ross said, you want to stay that even line. As I call it, is when I do the radio show, I get all hyped up, and I am hyper. All right. I am a D personality. I have a lot of I in me, but there's also a radio person that does late night radio. Her name's Delilah. And it drives me nuts. She like talks all the way down here. She brings it down. It brings everybody in and they talk quieter. And ultimately it changes the atmosphere. So if your behaviors and your actions are up here and looking for the fight, you're going to get that fight. If you reverse it and go back to it and bring them down a notch and maybe step out of the situation, make a disruption, do something. I don't know, end the conversation, stop talking, like Randy said. That's how I've done it. Go back to the mindset of how did, I'm going to say, Gorbachev and Reagan decide to take down the wall. Okay. The bottom line it came down was they couldn't communicate in a meeting. And they sat there and Reagan said, let's take a walk outside. And it was like minus some degrees. But these two were outside walking in Russia in the ice and snow. And it broke their mindset of this to energy. So, maybe I'm philosophizing a little bit. It comes down to relationships. It comes down to knowing how you want to win. And do you want to be in the fight? I say to buyers all the time, do you want to be in this fight? It is not going to be pretty. It is going to be emotional. And in the end, you're going to be either ticked off, you're going to be happy, disappointed, or mad at me. I'm good. I just need you to understand what is going to take place. As far as one of the things you were asking about, how do we deal with appraisal issues? That appraisal issue should have been dealt with in the beginning. If you didn't price it right, that's a you problem. If the market jumped over the value and you didn't put that clause in there that the buyer's responsible from the beginning, that's a you problem if you're the listing. If it's a buyer's problem, understand that you were willing to pay for it. And once you do this and maybe somebody else would waive it, that's the new benchmark for your next house. So if there's enough gap to have the mortgage companies still approve the loan, and it might go from a 70% loan to value to an 80% loan to value, then try to keep the transaction together. Those are some of the suggestions that I have. I know they're not real detailed, but they're more philosophy than anything else after 36 years of doing this. So that's how I work it, whether you like it.
And by the way, Delilah's 65 years old. That's why she talks like that.
I don't even know what she looks like. She drives me batshit crazy, man.
I just looked it up.
Yeah, really?
I can't do that either. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, before you go on, I didn't answer that second part, so I'll only answer half of it. When I represent a seller, typically what I do with my listings, and Randy knows this, I've been preaching this for 20 years, I always do a RPR report in front of or with my sellers, and I ask them all the questions that the appraiser is going to ask me or want to know up front. And I build my RPR report right there to show them what that kitchen they put in last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago for $30,000, what it represents today. RPR is brilliant, especially it's built by appraisers by the NAR for us to use as agents to satisfy that question. Because they forget. I don't know about you guys, but I got my license in 1985. I had to go to college and take an appraisal class just to get my real estate license. So as an appraiser, you have to know we are appraisers. That's our job. And I know Matt's got his way of doing it. And Craig, you've been around. I know Mitch. So the RPR report, I've never failed and I've never lost an appraisal yet on any listing where I sent the RPR over to the appraiser with my comps. And I'll leave it at that because it's brilliant. They can't fight it. They built it.
That's great. We'll actually leave because appraisals are funny though, right? I don't know how they are out there, but here sometimes they get really mad if you try to influence their thing. So what we do subtly is we leave a folder on the table, the kitchen table, with all the comps. and it just says comps on it. And sometimes we hear nothing, and sometimes the appraisal will call and say, "Hey, thanks for leaving those. I missed that one, or I missed that one." So, but yeah, appraisals are funny ducks, right? Catherine, Catherine, I want you to do this all in French, the entire lesson.
Donc, d'accord, je suis d'accord. Alors, pour les appraisal, I don't actually know. Je ne sais pas comment on dit ça
Guys, all getting this?
Hi, guys. Okay, so I would like to say about the appraisal.
She
Oh,
said,
sorry.
speak to the appraiser in French and he'll give you whatever value you want. That's what I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's a lot sexier than Philonese that I speak.
Oh my
You
God.
can tell somebody to kiss your backside in French,
That sounds good.
and they're gonna accept it.
The reality, I do whatever it takes, guys. That's the truth, you know? So, okay, so I just met with an appraiser yesterday. So that it's kind of good because it's fresh in my mind. And so the first thing I do is that I call the appraiser and say, hey, would it be all right for me to send you some of the comps that I have? And then they usually say yes. Actually, they welcome it if you ask nicely, I feel. And then I meet with them as well. And I come with all my comps and all my, pluses, minus, how great my house is. But what I think I do, which really works, I play, I wouldn't say dumb because I actually do not have the answers, but I ask them question, could you tell me how much is worth the fact this home is right on the golf course, like literally, compared to a home which is looking at a golf course? Like I start asking questions. Can you tell me what is the value of this or that? And then they get into it. They're teaching me. They really then open up. And then I get a relationship. I start joking, and then I can input more of the things I want to, expose, or all the advantages of my home and such. So I think by being able, and I know sometimes it's hard with these appraiser because they don't want to have somebody doing what I'm doing to them right now. But I feel if you do it in a way where you are very respectful, a little bit submissive, asking questions, help me, I don't know what that's it. That has worked for me, I feel, very well in terms of having them opening up. And then we start a conversation. By the time they leave, they tell me that, yes, that home is going to be good, So that's my 2 cents. To prepare everything, I tell them, yeah, I'm being transparent about the pluses, the minus. Like in this case, the tax records show less than what's on the MLS, and that was because that's the builder square footage. So I explain these things. I have it in writing. I think by being really detailed and transparent, and try to truly get a little bit of a relationship, it really helps. For the appraisal, that's kind of my 2 cents. Okay, in terms of when you are dealing with multiple offers, so the first thing, I just got 2 in escrow that way with buyers where I really go for the magic number right away. First of all, when I first talk to them, I do already ask them question. Hey, my clients, I can tell he's going to want to put an offer on this. What is the seller looking for? What you were talking about previously, Ryan, I believe. And then I ask them, is there any way you could ask the seller if there is a magic number where he will just take my client's offer and not wait for the other offer? And that really just works, and then obviously my clients have to be okay to go to that level. But that's what I do. If that doesn't work out, then I am harassing with kindness these poor listing agents with at least 4 times a day. I do not let go. I'm like in a zone, and I'm texting them, I'm sending them picture, I'm calling them, I'm emailing them, I'm calling for questions. I'm like sending a picture of my clients with a thumbs up in the house. And I just keep at it. And every time I talk to them, I can get more information. Where are the other offers? Can you guide me? I need to win this for my buyers. Please, whatever you can share with me. And that works great because I do win 95% of the multiple offers. So it really just works to don't be shy to harass them nicely, kindly, constantly until you get your offer accepted 4 times a day minimum. Honestly, that's kind of my thing to win.
Awesome. It's funny how it works when you actually communicate. I mean, you're going to find a common thread here. It all still comes down to communication, right?
Yeah, for
With
sure.
how well you communicate with people. Let's go to Randy.
And not Texas. Sorry for jumping in there. And not Texas.
Yeah.
On the phone, old school.
Local.
Pick it up.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone.
You guys know I wrote a book called The Rockstar Sales Guide. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm going to keep it tame. It's sold about 10,000 copies so far on Amazon. It's $1. You don't have to buy it because I'm going to give you the entire book right now. It's called The Rockstar Sales Guide. Don't do chicken shit marketing. First page says don't text. The second page says don't email. Third says pick up the effing phone. That's it. 10,000 copies. Pretty good, right? I think I make 35 cents on each one. Randy, go ahead, man.
Well, I would say, Catherine, it sounds like you're doing everything perfectly. I do have agents that do it the wrong way, and I think it also comes down to how you communicate it, even if it is a text or, I prefer a phone call, I guess. The language you use matters a lot, right? So you could sound very annoying following up on your client's offer, and doing it, whatever you said 4 times a week, but you sound very professional and actually appealing to the listing agent just by the language that you use. Because and here's why I say this: like when I get a lot, multiple offers on listings, I break down every single term of that contract with my clients on a spreadsheet. One of those line items is communication with the realtor and communication with the lender. And if that communication with the realtor is terrible or non-existent, and same with the lender, my seller is going to know about it, right? So the chances of you winning go down dramatically if you're the buyer's agent that's hard to reach, your lender is not on the same team with you in terms of communication style. Those are all red flags against you when you're competing on multiple offers. And I've had literally higher offers lose because my seller didn't want to work with a team that was terrible to work with, right? Because that dictates, for us at least, for the seller and myself as an agent, what should I be expecting with this team if we would take this offer when it comes to the buyer's agent and their lender. And most of the time when I share that, the seller is like, I don't want to deal with, that sounds like it will be a miserable experience. They're probably going to ask for credits. They're probably going to be rude the whole time. I would rather sell it for $10,000 less to this agent because you told me so many good things about them, how professional they are. So anyway, I can't stress enough how important that is, what Catherine mentioned. And having an accent helps. So that's a bonus. But so anyway, so that's my ad there. But I'm going to take it from a spin of investors, right? When you're working with investors, which, I was an investor for many, many years submitting offers, right? And the reality is, it's kind of interesting, because we were licensed investors representing ourselves in terms of calling the listing agent, right? When we saw an opportunity. And it doesn't matter what the market is doing. In the investor world, there is always competition, okay? So, and this is the interesting part where a lot of the misconceptions in investing is like, oh my goodness, you'll hear things like the market is blowing up. When we're in like a seller's market or across the country, you would have people like, how can you even get deals? Everything is over, selling over list price. It's so competitive. There's no way you can, get a deal. I'm like, well, no, just keep following the same formula. And I go into the conversation. But then when the market slows down, then those same people are like, oh my goodness, I'm afraid to buy anything. Like everything is falling apart. So that same person won't submit an offer in a seller's market, but then they also won't submit it in a buyer's market. And my answer to everybody when you're working with investors, find the serious ones that see opportunity in any market, but also understand that you're going to have competition from the serious investors in any market, regardless if it's a seller's or a buyer's market. You adjust, right, accordingly. But the common language that we always use to this day, I don't care what the market is doing, when we would call the listing agent, regardless if you're the agent representing the investor, or if you're the investor yourself calling the listing agent, and if you're on here, you're probably a licensed investor like myself, the conversation is very similar. Like, hey, Mr. Listing Agent, I saw this great property. Looks like it needs a lot of work based on the photos. If I'm licensed, my first thing is I'm going to ask the listing agent in a dual agency state, listen, I am a licensed agent. I'm not in it for the commission. Are you open to representing me? Most listing agents in a dual agency state are going to say yes. The only time I got pushback where they said no is because maybe it was an estate sale and they didn't want to get involved in representing both sides, or it's an REO. Some banks will not allow dual agency, right? When you're representing them and selling their asset. But 90% of the time, the listing agent is going to say, yeah, absolutely, I'll be interested in representing you. Well, now, all of a sudden, you slightly have an upper hand. I'm not saying you're going to win the offer, but every one of these things help to get me further ahead and hopefully getting my investor offer accepted, right? And then I said, great, thank you for allowing to potentially work together. Like, what can you tell me that I won't be able to see when I go to the property, right? And by the way, like I said, I am a licensed agent. I'm going to be there in 30 minutes or 60 minutes. You don't need to meet me there because I am a licensed agent. And I just keep reminding them about that, because what am I trying to tell them? I'm going to make this very easy for you, listing agent. And I'm going to go to this property and I'm going to evaluate it. But can you please tell me what I might not see? And the chances are, again, much higher that agent will, because now they feel like we're creating fiduciary duty with each other because she agreed to potentially represent me, or he. So now that agent is most of the time sharing some other things additionally on top of maybe things that they wouldn't to an agent that's calling on behalf of their client yet. So it feels like, a lot of times I'll get a little bit of that inside scoop. Then I go to the property and then I call the listing agent. And one of the first questions, okay, great, I want to submit an offer. Mr. Listing Agent, so outside of price, what's the most important thing? What does the best offer look like to your client? And I leave price out of the equation. And I ask the listing agent, and I provide actual examples, because some listing agents are so busy. If they're if they're representing 4, 5, 6 sellers at the same time, they might not even remember what their own seller told them that could look like. So I'll throw out ideas like, for example, would they like to have a rent back for 30 days after closing? Or maybe they need, some funds released prior to closing. Like, is there any, or, maybe they want to leave everything behind that they don't want to take. Is there anything like that comes to mind from when you met with the seller and when you took the listing? So I'm going to give them these ideas, and then it will trigger them to be like, oh, you know what? Yes, now I remember. And they want X, Y, and Z. I'm like, perfect. Anything else? Right? And again, all I'm trying to get is as much detail about how can I present an offer to the seller that looks exactly like what they told their listing agent they wanted, right? Outside of price, right? I'm trying to leave price out of it. And once I get all that information, then I talk about the price. But before I even talk about my purchase price with any listing agent, when I'm, when I'm going after a property, I first want to ask them, Mr. Agent, since potentially, we're going to work together on this on the purchase side, and I would love to obviously get this offer accepted once we submit it. I want to also understand, what do you think this house is worth? I mean, you're the expert in this area. I would love to know your opinion. What do you think this house is worth fully renovated? Like the best property on the block. What do you think? I want them to tell me what they think that value is, the after repair value. Why, you might ask? Why would that be important? Not maybe because they will be listing the property on the back end. That could happen if they ask for it. If they don't ask for it, I don't bring it up. But really what I'm trying to get at is when I actually tell that listing agent my offer amount, I don't want them to feel like I'm lowballing. And most agents will think that if they don't have context, right? Unfortunately. So what I'm trying to do is create context before I actually give them my offer amount. And I have to start from the end in mind. So I want to say, okay, so what do you think is that value, Mr. Agent? And let's say they say, oh, I believe it's, $1,250,000. I'm like, great. Okay, $1,250,000. Okay. So, if I agree with it, I'm like, okay, I feel like we're, on the same page. I like $1,250,000. So then I work into my numbers. Great. So we're on the same page. I actually was thinking something very similar. $1,250,000 when I go to resell it once it's renovated. And with all the pricing that just went up, and the pricing of labor keeps going up, and I kind of go into a little bit of a sob story of construction costs, and I say the construction on my end right now is probably going to be about $200,000 for this type of a property, and we have holding costs, right? But regardless, with all of that in mind, my offer is X, right? And then I drop the offer. But at that point, it's usually not a shock anymore, right? Because I've created context behind it. Now, if they told me that the ARV is 1.350 and I think it's 1.250 or 1.3, and we're $50,000 apart or more, I go deep into that conversation first. I'm like, great, well, tell me how did you arrive at that number? Because maybe I missed some comps, because I looked at this comp and that comp and this one. Maybe there's something I haven't seen. I would love to get your opinion again. Like if there's anything you can send me, because, I don't want to be off, because if the value really is with 1.35, then man, I want to take that into account when I'm submitting my offer. And I would literally pause and not give them my offer until I get on the same page with them on the ARV. Because if you're off on the ARV by $50,000 or more, your cash offer is going to look terrible, because they're thinking 135, you're thinking 1.3 or lower. Well, and no one talked about it, right? So you're getting off on the wrong foot right from the beginning. So anyway, I'm going a little bit deep, but this is the things I teach my investor clients, right? And the agents representing the investors. And this is how we kept winning offers, not every time, of course, but this is how we win offers, even off the MLS when we deal with agents. And then guess what happens? Many times we still don't win after doing all the things I just told you. But do I give up? No. I'm like, great. Let's assume that our offer got declined, right? And they give me the bad news. Like, hey, you know what? It's okay. You know what? We're used to it. We're usually not the first offer that gets accepted, and it's okay. But you know what? I'll follow up with you, in a week or so, and just see how this escrow is going, right? And then that has to go into my follow-up folder. And I follow up a week later, like, hey, Mr. Agent, how is that escrow going? Just wondering, is everything still good with that cash buyer? And so many times, guys, it falls out. I can't tell you how many times those type of escrows fall out, because there's a bunch of investors out there that are over submitting on their offer, and they try to beat the client down, or they're too optimistic. And then guess who comes in as the hero? You, with your investor client, bam. And that's how we get a lot of our offers, is on the first or second escrow falling out. The seller, it feels beat up by then. The listing agent starts looking terrible. Now they just want to get an offer for their seller that sticks. And it's no longer about the highest offer. It's about the one that's going to close, right? And that's where I want to be. That's the perfect spot to be as an investor, is when the first or second escrow, both of them fall out, and you stayed in touch with that agent, not in a harassing way, but like Catherine said, keep checking in. How's it going? How's it going? We're still, we're still interested. We're still interested. And then bam, you get them. That's how we got most of our deals, is on the fallout of the escrow. So I can keep going, but I'm going to stop there. This is a very different take. It's on the investor side, but I deal with competitiveness in any market, buyers and sellers. When it comes to working with investors, this is where you're going to deal with. Now, oh man, I got one more thing. In Florida, there are short sales, especially in Naples, Fort Myers. It's starting to happen. Guess what we did in San Diego when we had a lot of short sales, 15 years ago? We found the best short sale negotiator we could find. We asked them what they charge, and then we covered the cost of that short sale negotiator. And we would literally call the listing agent, be like, hey, we love this property, blah, 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 same spiel. The only difference would be, and by the way, we have a short sale negotiator that we're going to pay for out of our own pocket. How does that sound? So we delivered everything on a silver platter for that listing agent. So if you're in an environment of short sales, which is starting to happen in a couple markets, you need to then add that as like the add-on service that you pay for. Don't ask the agent to pay for it. I'll stop there.
That's awesome. And what's funny is about being the second or third contract is the sellers. Each one, the sellers is getting more and more frustrated. And I found that, I love coming in after an offer's already been falling apart because the seller might have already picked a new house. We just did this. I actually sold a house a couple weeks ago, which I haven't done in a long time. And I'm like, I'm going to show buyers. I haven't shown buyers in like 10 years. And I don't know what the big deal is. I showed 6 home, wrote an offer, got a contract closed in 2 weeks. What's the big deal? But their contract had just fallen out. They had an offer on another house. And so we were able to get it $20,000 less than their last contract price because they needed to sell.
Yep.
So it's a great benefit. All right, let's go to Miss Bridget. Hi, Bridget.
Hi,
There you
guys.
go.
Good morning. I will make it brief. I want to go back to the beginning. We've talked a lot about, obviously, it's the communication with the agents, right? From call one. So to back up there, especially if you're winning, you're in a multiple offer situation, people on the call should think of it really as a job interview. You're interviewing with that agent and you're interviewing for your buyer, right? So have that mindset. So show up at your best, don't, lazily, I want to show this house, or even just text. I try to do the calls. Sometimes the agents are like, just text me, and you're like, ugh, but I try to make that connection. But there's been a lot of talk about, like Ross is really I was just meeting with him the other day, and there's not even like a dip in it. It's just slow and steady and awesome. Me, I have a lot of energy. I'm like, hey, just it's fun, it's good, but they also know I very much know what I'm doing. But what I want to speak to everyone on this call is you need to be your authentic self and show up as your best. And if you're too quiet and you're not asking questions, then you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and really communicate and ask the questions people have, pointed out. What's your seller's motivation? Where are they moving? And bridge that gap between you and the agent too. All the things said on when you're winning multiple offers, it is what do they need? What do they want? The rent back, the timelines, what's their goals outside of price, because price is always this, but make everything else tight. But the only thing that wins is authenticity. And that's what you need to show up as you, but really the best version of you, and know that you're interviewing for your client's offer. You're their representative, and you want to make that agent, like you and trust you as much as possible. So we've talked about that, but we've talked about the different personalities. The only thing that's going to work is show up as you, but get out of your box. If you're rude, don't be rude. Okay. Like be on that interview, be that best behavior. And then in regards to appraisals, I have a 30-year lending background as a top producer. I have done so many appraisal rebuttals that I can't even tell you. And this is what just happened to me. I'm very good at it. I know what you can and can't submit. But what I want to say is there are cuts out there. Even if you've gone to the seller, you can't really always just say, well, that's a seller issue. They didn't price it right. Because sometimes it's an appraiser issue. with an ego problem and it's one man's opinion of value. I just put in a property off market at 1.7 and I would have listed it for 1.85 myself. I would have listed it 150,000 higher. Seriously, I know the comps, I know the neighborhood, Bay Views. Wasn't worried about the appraiser. It was a flip. And they picked it up for like 874 but they put almost $500,000 into it. And so they're hitting the market at 1.7. I get into escrow. I was not worried about the appraisal and either was the seller. It just, the value's there all day long. So we get an appraisal and the appraiser, he hated this was a personal issue with a flipper, with an investor nation, for sure. He went and used comps that were 1 year old, June and July of 2024, when there were comps literally 0.2 miles away, same age, same views, same square footage that just closed like 3 days prior. I mean, just identical. So sometimes you can't help it. When you're in a situation like that, that's where I spent like 2 days really making a great appraisal rebuttal. And I said, we're wasting our time. This guy hates flippers, I can tell. And he went out of his way to bring in this property as low as he possibly could. He used almost like a manufactured home, a 2-bedroom. I mean, like the guy should have been fired. And you can't even complain about an appraisal. It's a racket. So he should have been written up. This was, it was that bad. So sometimes you can't control it. Number one, even though I was representing the buyer, a lot of the times when I'm representing the buyer, I want the deal to go right. And we don't think we're overpaying for it. I meet that appraiser there, even if I'm representing the buyer. I have my comps. I paint by number here, have these for you. I can email them to you too, just like Catherine does. I didn't meet him there, and neither did the listing agent, which is really her job to get that value in. It's her sale. Neither of us were even worried. So I broke my own rule. I didn't meet the appraiser there. And sometimes when you're in a multiple offer situation, you don't always want to go help the appraiser bring it in because maybe it does come in lower. You have the appraisal there to protect your buyers so they're not overpaying, right? That's what the appraisal's for. If your buyers are like, oh my God, well, I don't want to go that way, that high. What if it doesn't appraise? So the conversation is the appraiser's there to protect you. If it appraises, we can go back and renegotiate. Unless we're in a market like we were a few years ago and you're waiving that appraisal contingency and you're making sure you have enough cash to bring it in. So sometimes you really don't have control of the appraiser. I calmed my client down. This is one guy's value. He's got a chip on his shoulder. 100%. My client trusted me. And then it came back to the lender, guys. They immediately reworked it. Somebody was saying, I don't know who was saying it, but it was Craig. You go from, maybe you were at 70%, now you're at 80%. The other thing that you can do if appraiser's really butchered like that, which is rare these days, like maybe this was $165,000. They brought it in at 1.5. The comp next door was at 1.9 that sold like 4 months ago. I mean, it was a butcher job. So sometimes those happen. So when that happens, call your lender. Can they rework it? Does your client have money to come in with it? They really love it. And in California, you can't just order a new appraisal. So sometimes you have to start over and switch lenders. We couldn't do that for 2 reasons. One, my client's loan was way too complicated and rates had gone up because of the stock market. So it was like we were stuck. So we were able to renegotiate it. Thank God my client had more money. But my point to all this is you can't control it even if you listed it right. Sometimes it just happens. Meet the appraiser there, even if you're representing the buyer. And for sure, if you're representing the seller, be there. Paint by numbers, because you never know if they're in area or out of area, what they've gone through that day. It's all personal and ego with appraisers. It's absolutely horrible. And they can really mess up people's lives. So it's such a delicate point. So always meet them there. Don't do what I did and just say on this one, there's no way there's an issue and have it be a huge issue. And then I want to also tell everybody on the call, we all have a lot of experience. That's why we're on this panel, and we know what to say, and we know what matters. And if we get in a sticky situation, we know the workaround. So I want to just say to everyone on the call, if you come up with an appraisal cut or you're in a multiple offer situation and these conversations aren't fresh in your mind, reach out to one of us. We love to negotiate. Like last week on the negotiations, man, we were just a pack of wolves. Like we're mean and lean and walking down that road, and we want to negotiate. We want to win, and we know how to win. But I want to just say to everybody, if you call your team lead, call me. My number is 760-443-5300. If you need you're in a sticky situation and you want to know how to go forward or how to win an agent or how to overcome anything, I'm sure that everybody on this call would probably, have someone to reach out, but reach out. Don't stay stuck. If you really feel like maybe somebody that's on your team or your leader or someone who brought you into XP doesn't have that experience, then, work around them. Call one of us, text one of us, say, hey, do you have 2 minutes? Because you need in this market, whether it's pushing a buyer into escrow or keeping something in escrow, you need experience, and every situation's different, right? It's easier for us, but until you don't know. Until you know to mark a home warranty box on appraisal on an offer, and it's customary that the seller pays for it. Until you know that, you just don't know that, and you got to find that out. So we're all here to help, and every situation is different. And just when I think I've seen it all, something new pops up, right? But we're here to help you find the language, lead the conversation when you're negotiating for either your buyer or your seller, so your deal doesn't fall apart and we all win. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, so I want everybody to call Bridget tomorrow. You're gonna get 40 phone
Call
calls.
Mitch.
Yeah,
He doesn't work.
Hey, look, you guys, I don't work. I just sit here and eat bonbons and play my guitar all day long. You guys know that. My 4 companies run themselves. All right, I'm going to finish us off here with a couple of things. First of all, you've heard this several times. Be nice. I have won so many battles over the years by being nice, but more importantly, especially the multiples offer, if I was nice to that agent at one point before and I helped them, I always win multiple offers. If it's someone that I know because I was nice to them, always win, because they're going to say, and I've done this, we've all done this. I'll say to myself, like, we got 3 offers. This agent's a jerk, right? And I don't trust him to finish the deal. This agent's amazing. And this agent, I don't know. And we're going to go with the amazing agent, even if the price is different, right? Always understand who's on the other end. So the first thing I do when I get an offer, when I've gotten offers, or when I'm presenting an offer, is I want to know who the agent is on the other side. I look them up. I look up their sales. I look up their social media. I want to know who I'm talking to before I even talk to them. Because once I know who they are, I'm going to adjust my tone with them based on that. Some people I have to be stern. Some people I just have to have a good time, make stupid bad jokes like I'm really good at. Those are much fun, by the way. I always win those. But when like if I know it's a brand new agent on the other side, I'm going to help them, but I'm going to take advantage of that for my seller or my buyer. I'm going to make sure that my customer wins because that's who I work for. Next thing I want to talk to you about real quick is there's two different things. We'll talk about sellers first, especially in this market, on price reductions. So price reductions are, it's always an uncomfortable conversation, right? Because we told them the value was here, and now we're like, oh yeah, we're going to lower the price this time. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to lower it again. So what I've done several times over the years, and I actually really enjoy doing this, is I will go and bring them on showing appointments. I'll take them out to look at houses, and I'll take it homes that are priced exactly the same or more or less in the range. And I'll say, look at this kitchen. Is your kitchen more valuable than this kitchen? Look at the flooring. And I'll go through the house and I'll take that. I've gotten so many easy price reductions once I do that. Because remember, their house is amazing to them, right? The pictures online are amazing. Everything's amazing. And they've got the best. And by the way, 2 years ago, that home sold for that, right? So when you show them in real time, not pictures, because all pictures look great, in real time, and you say, is this kitchen better? Is this living room better? Is this flooring better? Is this yard better? Is this pool better? All that stuff. I've got so many listings. And then my last one, this is what I want to spend a few minutes on because I think it's really important. I'm a huge expectation guy. And what do I mean? A couple things, a life lesson I'll give you real quick is all of your disappointments in life are based on your expectations of others. Right? If you can get rid of your expectations of others, you will get rid of 90% of your disappointment in your life. I learned that the hard way, but it was probably one of my best lessons I learned in 2012. I'm not going to tell you the story because it'll take too long. But my dad came down after being dead for 20 years and told me that my expectations are not their expectations. And it was an amazing message from my dead dad, who's always with me still. And he told me he died from stress. And I was going to die from stress. I can guarantee you, if I didn't merge my brokerage to EXP, I'd be dead right now. But I learned that my expectations are not their expectations. I live by that. So I want you to think about this. When I go to an inspection for a buyer, here's what I say to them. Just so you know, there's going to be 40 or 50 things wrong with this inspection. I know the house looks beautiful, but there's going to be 40 or 50 things wrong. And the seller's not going to be responsible to fix anything. Okay. Now we go do the inspection. We know there's going to be 15 or 20 things wrong. There's always 15 or 20 things wrong, right? But I want to exaggerate that. 40 or 50 things wrong. When it comes back to 15 or 20, they go, oh, not too bad. Easy. I've never, because I have, in the last 15 years, I've not lost a deal to an inspection. I do the same thing to the seller. Just so you know, there's going to be 15 to 20, there's going to be 30, 40 things wrong with this house that we don't even see, the inspection, and the buyer might want all of them fixed. Right? Might want all of them fixed. And then when they come back and want 4 or 5 things fixed, they're like, oh, not bad. Set that expectation way up here. And when it comes in down here, and by the way, that's everything in life. And this is, I mean, I use this in life. It's not just real estate. I always set everything way up here. And when it comes in down here, or I set it down here, depending on what the situation is, and it comes in way up here, I'm the hero. Either way, you win. And I've never, ever, again, I can't think of, since 2012, when I learned this lesson from my dad, I can't tell you a deal I've ever lost over an inspection. All right. Right on the 1 o'clock time. I love that. Perfect. I know I'm not as good looking as Pete as the host, but I do my best. And I know I talk too fast, but I'm from Boston like Pete. And I got full head of hair on my back, just like Pete does on his head. Anyways, have a great week, guys. We'll see you all next week.
Have a great week, everybody. Go get them.
Au revoir, bonne semaine, à bientôt.
Dundee.
Thanks, Mitch. Take care.
Bye, guys.